Okay, good morning. My name is Paul East, Head of Packaging, Recycling and Design at Recoup. Welcome to the fifth in a series of webinars for Recoup members on a range of areas that are impacting or will impact the plastic value chain in the coming years. Firstly, thank you to our chair and speakers, our chair Mike Baxter, and our speakers Stephen Walsh from Tomra, Franz Kraus from Tipper, Zubair Bajwa, sorry, got that pronounced wrong, from Eurokey, and Michelle Marone from Gualapac. And thank you for finding the time to join us today. Next slide, please. Most of you are familiar with Recoup and its aims across plastic resource efficiency, recycling, and educating the public. For those that are less familiar, we are a cross-sector membership-based charity set up over 30 years ago and now have over 150 members that include plastic packaging manufacturers, brands, retailers, local authorities, waste management companies, and recyclers. Slide, please. Four main areas of activities: policy and infrastructure, packaging, recycling and design, sustainability and circularity, and communication and engagement. Within those areas, there's a whole raft of core activities each year, which we agree with our members and our board. These include guidance such as recyclability by design, research reports around the collection, sorting, and reprocessing of plastics, and also our consumer-facing Place to Recycle Plastics initiative. Just a few words about housekeeping and how this webinar runs. Please do not use the chat function or virtually raise your hand, as we will not be monitoring these during the session. If you have a question, please use the Q&A function, which is found in the menu at the bottom of the screen. These will be used for questions at the end of each presentation and also at the end of the webinar. Just to confirm, only our speakers and chair have access to camera and microphone, and also to inform you the webinar is being recorded. My colleague Bex will be controlling the slides, and the recording of the webinar will be shared with you. So finally, thank you again to our chair and speakers for finding the time to join us today, and I'll hand over to our chair. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Paul, and a good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. I think it's important that we continue to communicate like this because travel is difficult, as we all know, but at the same time as we've still got COVID running on, we've got two huge issues facing our industry, which is, of course, the plastic tax that comes into place on the 1st of April next year, and the revision to the UK packaging waste regulations in the form of new EPR, which more will be revealed by DEFRA, I am sure, next year. And on top of that, we've got consumer pressure on plastics. I mean, some of you probably haven't been in this industry as long as I have, but I know a lot of you have got huge experience, and I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen the pressure, particularly that the brands and the retailers are under, to take a more dominant role in ensuring that the packaging they place on the market is collected and is recycled. So that's the background. You all know it, and we've got some great speakers today. All of whom can talk about sustainability, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about sustainability and recycling of plastics. And finally, I just have to say a word about Recoup. It is, to my mind, the most significant of the NGOs in this field. Recoup is regarded as the come-to organisation by brands, retailers and government when they want information. So if you're not a member of Recoup, then perhaps you'd like to consider doing that, because the more members that Recoup has, then the bigger and the better organisation it becomes. So that's enough from me, and we're just about on time. So I'm now going to hand over to Steve Walsh. As a recycler, I know Steve and I know Tomra. Steve's the area sales manager for Tomra. And Steve, without further ado, over to you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so let's dive straight in. So Tomra, as Mike has introduced, we are a recycler who or a recycling company which has applications for reverse vending machines and for sorting materials both across the waste sector, the food sector, and even some in mining and valuable material, valuable resource recovery. So what's driving the opportunities in the films and flexibles area? To look forward, we have to look back a little bit. So if we look at the way the world's grown into globalization, this was supported years ago with the PERN system, which encourages export and also inadvertently kind of discouraged recycling at home through cost of power and water treatment and such like. The Far East took huge advantage of this. And for a number of years in the West, we were largely blissfully ignorant of the volumes of byproducts and waste products that were being amassed elsewhere. That was at least until they became overwhelmed. This ultimately led to China closing its doors, and subsequently other countries which had taken advantage of very cheap materials also then faced problems and then ultimately restricted imports as well. This volatility around the world started to cause massive capacity and price fluctuations at home. And, for a long time, materials could be exported one minute and would end up in landfill or energy from waste the next. And over this time, while the European market stayed reasonably stable, the public became increasingly aware of the plastics issue. But how did it become such a big issue? This guy, he had a younger brother. And although he's very famous for being Santa Claus and for breeding dinosaurs, his little brother created the blue planet effect. And this then led to this girl not really going to school very much and protesting climate change, which led to mass protest. Extinction Rebellion being but one group, have really been protesting climate change for some time, which ultimately has led to a sustainability megatrend. Because plastics has got the most visible impact on the planet, it's very much the most Googled issue. So if you look at sustainability and climate change, Googling of those terms hasn't really improved. Plastics really has. And ultimately that's led to this environmental bill. And that in turn is about to give us deposit return systems, consistency of household collections, a ban on single-use plastics, and the extended producer responsibility. Plastic packaging will reinforce each of those issues. So in the face of this seismic shift, manufacturers have gone from producing, miracle products that preserve our food and allow us to move it around the world, to the manufacturers of global doom. So how is the plastic industry coping with it? Well, the plastics industry, as Mike alluded to, is under siege. I couldn't think of a time, and I really did try to give this some consideration, but I can't think of a time or another industry that has been put under the same amount of pressure without there being a huge economic crisis, a war, a revolution, a natural disaster, anything like that. And usually those are the mechanisms which would compel an industry to completely change its supply chain, completely change its products it's producing, have to even cancel some of the projects it's producing because of the plastics tax, the plastics ban, and all the time in the face of unknown growing cost with EPR, DRS and plastics tax coming online. So where there is all this challenge, there is a little bit of hope. So let's see what the opportunities are. This is where Tomra have decided to pitch themselves. So as I said earlier, we do have a deposit return arm to the business, but realistically, there's a huge volume of material that we still need to capture and that we still need to make good use of the resource. This unit you can see on your screen now is specifically aimed at film sorting. It allows high-speed sorting of materials by polymer, by color, and even, post-grind and wash process, we can recover smaller flakes and purify those to ensure that high-quality materials are going back into that circular supply chain. Ultimately, that's the key, isn't it? We want film producers to buy film flake, put back into their material. Next slide, please. Tomra are a global company. So we have created a number of partnerships, and we see a huge amount of commitment across the industry. So we're working with manufacturers on the design of their products for recycling. We've worked on watermarking products to ensure that they're recovered into the right streams. And of course, we work with mechanical recyclers, chemical recyclers, and various other people around the world. Certainly in the UK, the opportunities are, well, there's huge amounts of opportunity, as I said, because of globalization. We don't really have a huge amount of infrastructure in the UK for recycling flexibles. The commercial film element is being chased, which I'm sure Bureau IQ will talk a little bit more about. But there is still a huge amount of post-consumer material that's going to become available. So what lies ahead and where are the opportunities? Well, the future potentially can force us in one direction or another, or as I've put here, one trouser leg or the other. For flexibles, if they don't balance the DRS and the EPR type charges correctly, we could find ourselves in a position where commercially manufacturers of currently rigid trays and things like that start to weigh up the benefits of lightweighting and the adjustment in cost of EPR or potentially plastics tax to favour moving towards flexible materials. That in itself is fine because they'll have a good news story of being able to save so much in, so many plastic tons and all that sort of stuff. But for the sorting infrastructure we already have, a gain of 1 ton of film is fine when it's in a bale, it's a cubic metre. But when it's loose, we're talking, 25 cubic metres of material. It will overburden the system that we've got. It adds complexity to the existing MRF infrastructure sorting, and ultimately that could push up EPR costs for the manufacturers who were trying to do what they thought was the right thing at the time. Also, with this influx of potential new products, people start to look at different materials, different opportunities, different ways they can package their products. Now, I do believe everything has its place in the recycling and the recovery loop, but there is a potential for further unintended consequences. Slide. It would be very easy to make a leap from the existing compostable packaging into, a water bottle, a sports bottle. Seems like a great idea in terms of the way it could be marketed to the public, but inadvertently, people using these things on the go and believing that they're degradable and they'll be fine to throw into nature could inadvertently lead to more littering. It certainly would lead to more complications when it comes to mechanical sorting and trying to ensure that some of this material doesn't make its way into the supply chain of the manufacturers looking for LDPE, HDPE, polyprop films. The good news here is that Tomra can provide the solution for this. So for us, it's a great opportunity, regardless of, if legislation doesn't quite give the push it needs to the industry. Tomra can find the solution. It just means the increased sorting cost ultimately leads to increased EPR contributions. However, if we are forced down the right trouser leg and EPR is structured well and DRS complements it and actually it keeps the status quo for a lot of the rigid products, it will simplify the sorting processes in MRF. And actually the consistency of collections that should be imposed then across the country should also increase the recovery of flexible materials. Yes, there are challenges. When you tell the householder to recycle film, they give you every piece of flexible, material, whether it's crisp packets, loaves of bread, pasta packaging, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, the point is that there will be more material to work with, easier recoverability, and overall, we should then be able, as an industry, and certainly as a supplier of sorting equipment, we should be able to achieve a much higher purity of output materials to feed back into those supply chain. that then leads to reduced EPR costs, lower contributions to the plastic tax, and so on. So actually, it's a benefit for the whole industry. So whatever happens, there is a solution. Talk to me, ultimately. Yeah, talk to this guy. So I've put my email on this final slide. You know, I'm open to questions now. But of course, if you want to make any inquiries or more, I need more detailed information or whatever, then of course you have my email address. Or even if you just want to fire an insult over, by all means, go ahead. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Steve. Excellent. We've had a question in it. It's from Nick Hunt. The question is, can your products distinguish between paper and paper-like, i.e. white non-woven?
So the challenge...
That's the first question.
Okay.
And the second part is, what's the approximate cost of an installation? Guideline.
It depends. So the second questions are perhaps a little bit easier to answer, yeah. So I'll go with that first. The cost of an installation depends on your material feedstock, what you're trying to produce, the quality of output that you require, the volume that you want to produce. There's a million variables in this scenario. So it's impossible to say off the top of my head. I'd certainly happily look at any projects that present we roughly want to sort this material into these products at this speed, and then we can work backwards from there. When it comes to paper versus paper-like, we are continuously assessing new materials. So as people have tried to move away from packaging, the thing that springs to mind was when Iceland announced we're going to ban all plastic packaging on our own product lines within the next 4 years, I think they said. And when they were pressed for what they're going to do, they went fiber type products. So this has given rise to now fiber type products. Lots of them are laminated in plastics. It depends on a number of factors. So we are continuously testing them. Some are laminated on one side to protect food. You know, if that polymer layer is too thick, we may not see the paper through it. If the same item is flipped upside down on the belt, it'll look like paper. But it doesn't mean that the paper industry wants it because of the plastic element. It doesn't mean that the plastic industry wants it because of the paper element. So we have to be careful on the way these products are designed and ensure that they're captured effectively.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, I find it somewhat ironic that Paul in the opening remarks was talking about greenwash. So you have a rather absurd situation where a product was packed in a straightforward LDP bag, which is clearly recyclable.
Yeah.
And then you move to maybe a paper polylaminate, which is not recyclable.
And this is my main concern at the moment, Mike, if I'm honest, is that this legislation has the benefit of really shaping the industry and developing a strong infrastructure for domestic recycling.
Yeah, well,
or it could inadvertently encourage the growth of a huge variety of products that we just can't sort and get back to the source, which is ultimately the goal, isn't it? It's creating those circular economies of each manufacturing loop.
We have to hope that under EPR, as I'm sure everybody knows, that included in that will be modulated fees. And I think we can say that the assumption will be that a harder to recycle material will have a much higher modulated fee as opposed to a material which is deemed easier to recycle. So I have a question for you, Steve. As someone who probably has a little bit of more experience than most of actually recycling front of store, first time it's been mentioned this morning, what we're finding is that it's the range of MFIs, melt flow index and density, that actually the biggest problem. In other words, you can see a crisp packet and pull that out, or you can see a bisque packet, or you can even see the metallized pouch, the metallized cat food pouch with half of Moggy's breakfast still left inside it. They can be pulled out. The problem comes from the vast range, in our case, of flexible films. What are you doing, or is there anything that you can do to help us in that sphere?
So we're always developing technology. It's something that's it's top of our agenda. We spend 8% of our revenue back into R&D, so there's a significant budget for it. When it comes to being able to sort by polymer, that's not an issue. We can see things like LDPE, LLDPE, HDPE versus LDPE becomes a challenge because spectral image is so close. The truth is, it's a continuous challenge, and we only know what we can work with today, if that makes sense. So we know what's collected in certain household streams or commercial streams, and we know what we can do with it. The challenge will always be refining the materials to the right level that the manufacturer wants. And that's often why I think people like the commercial industrial type films, because there's a huge variety in post-consumer materials where it's much more consistent in the commercial industrial outputs.
Thanks, Steve. You're absolutely spot on there. But of course, the challenge for everyone in industry, all stakeholders, is going to be going forward, is how we can successfully sort and recycle curbside and in growing front of store until EPR comes in. Well, Steve, that was very interesting. I haven't had any more questions come into the Q&A, and we're just about on time. So thanks for that. If anybody's got any further questions, Steve's email is there, and I'm sure he'd like to hear from you. So moving on, because I'm trying to keep in front, so we've got plenty of time for questions at the end. Our next speaker is, I know quite a few of you know Franz already, is Franz Kraus. He's like myself, a regular on the speaking circuit. And Franz is the Director of Public Affairs at TIPA. So without further ado, Franz, it's over to you.
Thank you, Mike. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through fine.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me again on one of your webinars, and thank you for having me as a member. I was very much honored to have been invited by you to take part in your conference a few weeks ago in Peterborough, and it was the first conference for me where I traveled, which took place physically. And what I felt at the conference is that when it comes to compostable solutions, there was a lot less hostility as there used to be, and much more curiosity about what our solutions can bring to the table, what we can do and what we cannot do. So I'll happily talk about what we can do and what we cannot do. And I work for TIPA. TIPA is a startup based in Israel, and which produces mainly flexible, compostable packaging solutions. Next slide. But you know the figure, there's almost 50% of all plastic produced is made into a package, and most of it is used for food packaging. So that's a segment we wanted to go to. Next slide. And 40% of all consumer goods are packaged in flexible plastic packaging. So there's a lot of flexible packaging out there. Next slide. Now, I don't want to bash anybody, but the figures are as low as they are, and the last figures coming out from show that 6% of consumer flexible plastic is actually being recycled. In many parts of the world, this is a lot lower than that. And this is not about pointing fingers. This is about finding solutions. organic or composting, according to UK and also EU regulation, is considered to be organic recycling. And if it is being composted, it also counts into recycling rates. So what we want to do is help bring up this rate and help complement other recycling methods that are out there. Next slide. Now, again, this is not about bashing anyone, but flexible plastic is one of the main contributors to ocean plastic, which has been on the forefront of attacks against the plastic industry and against the packaging industry in general. So again, this is about finding solutions. This is not about pointing fingers. And again, we want to be part of the solution. That is why we decided to focus on flexible packaging only. Next slide. This was done at Wageningen University, a study commissioned by the Dutch government, which looked into what compostable material actually does when it ends up in the industrial compost site. And it clearly shows that it does disintegrate and biodegrade when it ends up in the right environment. It also shows that about 49% of the plastic contamination in the compost is again derived from flexibles. Next slide. And if you haven't read it, there's a very good study which came out last year that Systemic pulled together, financed by the Pew Foundation, which looks into how we can bring down plastic contamination in the environment. And that's going to be more and more, and reports will be coming out soon to show that the ocean is not the only place which is where there is a problem. There is twice as much plastic in our soil, and the soil is where we grow our food. So that will be a more and more of concern to us going forward. Now, Systemic looked into what are the means already available now to bring down, this plastic contamination in our environment. And as you can see, what they came up with is that substitution with paper and compostables is almost as important as recycling. So I think we all have a role to play. Instead of stepping on each other's toes, we should simply work together. Next slide. What inspired us, and the same study I mentioned by the Wageningen University about material biodegrading in a compost environment showed that orange peels still showed up at the end of the process. But nevertheless, that was our inspiration for the way produce packaging that packages food and other material the way nature packages an orange. And that was the inspiration for setting up Keeper 8 years ago. Next slide. We are constantly working on improving our products. And what we want to do is provide packaging that comes as close as possible to a flexible packaging that is on the market, but which is fully compostable at its end of life, be it industrially or home compostable. Next slide. Now, there's enough compost sites available in the UK for the moment. There's more than 40 that already have permits to deal with our material. We work with a number of them, and it does work when it gets there. The problem is we need to ensure that it gets there. And that's why we want to work together with Recoup, and we are trying to work on a project that shows what already works, what we have to do on the labeling side, on the sorting side, and on the collection side to make this to get our material to its destined end of life, which is a compost environment. Again, our material should never be littered, and those who believe that you just, whatever is, as I was said just before, that this could induce consumers to just throw out and litter our products. That's not where it should end up in, and we should all fight against littering. There's no miracle solution out there. Those who claim that things disappear in the environment, maybe our material breaks down a lot faster than conventional plastic does in the open environment. Nevertheless, it will take years to do so. So it should never be littered. It should make it in its destined end-of-life environment, and that's a compost site or a home composter. Next slide. So we also believe that our solution is a fully circular one, that it makes it back when it breaks down into the soil, breaks down to its carbon biomass with its carbon molecules that then are taken up by the plants again, making the circle full again. And for the moment, our material is depends on what our customers want, but in between 20 and 80% bio-based, depending on what type of specificities you need. We are constantly working with the next generations of our product to increase the amount of bio-based content in our products, hopefully moving also to a much more renewable feedstock that is derived from agricultural waste going forward. And we are working on that. There's a lot of things that still have to be done in R&D, but we are moving forward. Next slide. So our solution is out there. It can provide a solution. We need to make it to the destined end of life of our material, and that's a compost site. And the ideal way of doing so is putting our certified products into the organic waste stream. We will receive, and I'm sure of that, a big boost for our solutions once we will collect all food and green waste by 2024 in the UK and across all EU markets. Once we do that, as we said in the beginning, there's a lot of conventional plastic that will be found in a food waste stream. So we can provide a solution for that. And I look forward to working together with you on making this solution possible. On the policy support, which was mentioned earlier, we just had an event in Parliament yesterday on for the bioplastics industry. And the main messages from our industry was that we are moving ahead, not because of policy, but often in spite of it. So we will continue to move ahead, and we will continue to provide solutions. Open to any questions you might have. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Franz. Franz, have you got access to the Q&A on the bottom of your screen to save me reading out the questions too? But I'll read them out anyway, so everybody can hear. But this is from Jonathan Pallas. And, oh, hang on, I haven't got my camera turned on. Better do that, hadn't we? Oh, yes, very important. There we are. Compostables are a great solution where there is no plastics recycling infrastructure. However, in the future, where there is a fit-for-purpose infrastructure, a good example, it would be front of store. Where do they fit in? This is of particular interest since they potentially contaminate plastic feedstock and may indirectly reduce the efficiency of this recycling infrastructure. So I think there's two questions there, Franz, at least. Where do they fit into the infrastructure? And certainly one that I think the question that gets raised the most often is potential contamination of the waste plastic feedstock.
Well, happy to answer the questions, Mike. On the first one, where do they fit in? There's things that even when you have infrastructure put in place, you will not be able to recycle. Just think about food contact material, which you're not legally allowed to recycle, or at least in very few cases. And think of salad bag, the cut salad inside, the salad gone off. How will you recycle that? So the potential solution for us is to throw it into the organic waste stream and recycle and compost the packaging together with the gone off salad. On the contamination of other waste streams, yes, it's the currently that goes both ways. If you as said earlier, most of the contamination found currently in organic waste streams comes from flexible packaging that is conventional. On the other hand, if you manage to offer compostable solutions, and sorry to always pick up the example of Italy, but they have a system in place for the last 10 years there's figures to show, and I'm happy to share that with you, that once you introduce compostable solutions for the applications that are most likely to contaminate organic waste streams, you also take out the contamination in mechanical recycling waste streams. And there's figures to prove that. So if you focus on the areas where you can provide an added value, we simply help each other.
Okay, I've got one more question for you. This is from an anonymous attendee. How do you tell compostable packaging from plastic packaging in food waste when they look exactly the same? This results in it being removed as contamination and going to EFW or landfill. So how can you tell the difference between a compostable packaging and an ordinary plastic in food waste?
That's a very good question, and this is a question that needs to be taken up. It needs to be taken up by regulation. There needs to be a mandated, harmonized labeling system of compostable packaging being easily recognizable. You can work with a lot of stuff from the sorting part. You can, there's chemical tracing going forward. The spectral image of compostable packaging is a lot different, so you can sort it out. When it comes to collecting, there needs to be a very visible marking on the packaging, and that needs to be harmonized and it needs to be regulated. There's people who've put very radical solutions on the table, where they mark the whole thing in pink or whatever, in a very visible color. Our marketing people will kill us for that, but there needs to be some sort of very visible marking, and that needs to be mandated.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Franz. That was the last question. Once again, I'm sure if any of you have got any other questions, if you haven't got Franz's email address, send it through to Recoup or to me, and we'll forward it on. Now, thank you, Franz. Now we've got a presentation that I'm looking forward to. I mean, I've been looking forward to all of the presentations, but I'm particularly looking forward to this one. It's from Zubair Bajwa, who is the operations director for Eurokey Recycling. We know each other quite well, but I've never had a presentation from Zubair before, so this will be a first. And Eurokey are a major player in the UK waste sector, as many of you know. I think some of you know the announcements that they've made, but I don't want to steal Zubair's thunder. So over to you, Zubair.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Mike. And yes, I'm ready to present it to you first time. So let's see how it goes. As a stakeholder in the recycling industry, first of all, I would like to say thanks to Recoup for organizing this very important webinar, which covers the most important topic of the industry on films. And I would like to begin actually introducing Eurokey, which is beneficial for those who don't know about us. Eurokey Recycling is a 27 years old business acquired recently by Reconomy Group. And with this acquisition of Reconomy, it has expedited our plans, and with the vision of the management, it is taking us to, it's helping us to achieve our goals. And myself, Zubair Bajwa, I'm the operations director for Eurokey Recycling. Our core business is to provide closed loop services from the point of collecting, sorting, and working with third partners on making the recycling closed loop possibilities, working on all types of plastic and also in cardboard sector too. My presentation is based on 2 points. The first one I will cover without using the presentation, and that is about the market and what do we need as infrastructure in the market to help us achieve the government goals of circular economy. And the second part is what we as a European economy is doing to play our role in the industry. So starting from the government goals of circular economy to achieve circular economy and with its ambitious targets, it needs a lot from a recycling industry. We as a stakeholder need to play a very important part. And I will be only talking about from the operational perspective of the materials when it comes to us, from the consumers, the supermarkets, And when it comes to us, we must understand and accept the fact that as the previous speakers have mentioned, that we do not have enough infrastructure within the UK to sort the material properly, which will enable more recycling and reprocessing within the UK market. Hence the reason there has been exports been happening and more facilities being set up in Europe. And the main reason is because they have infrastructure there, and there's a cost impact as well, and they're able to get the in-feed material for their processing facilities. So it's more better investment for them there. The lack in UK we've been facing actually, of course, is there hasn't been enough capacity and the right infrastructure to handle this material. Yesterday's figure from even Recoup's new report have shown as well what the film percentages are as compared to the bottles. So there is a very big gap there in the market. For actual recycling to happen within the UK, we must target and face the fact of sortation. How the material, when it comes to the recyclers, to us, how do we handle it? Can we make this material ready for suitable in-feed stock for the reprocessing facilities so they can close the loop and they can help us to achieve the target of circular economy for sustainable future? And unfortunately, it's not there at the moment. For UK, of course, to do more recycling within it, we need to achieve the sortation phase, which will help us to attract more investment within the UK market, will bring more reprocessing facilities here. Ultimately, we'll be able to cover we'll be able to do more recycling within the market here. This takes me to my second part of the presentation, which I would like to highlight that what Euroki is doing in this to play our role in this whole market. And I would like to specifically talk about the supermarket films, which is very complex material. It contains various polymers, well over 10 plus different types of plastic in different shapes and forms, in different sizes. And it is one of the complex material, and one of the complexities there, it is mixed, but it's all recyclable. But because the way it's mixed, it needs very good sortation for it to go to the reprocessing facilities to make the new product out of this. And Euroki Recycling have huge experience in this materials. And we've been working on the project for last 3 years to conduct the sortation on the automated line as per the need of this type of waste stream. And we have, I'm proud to say that we have achieved that target, and now the project is ongoing. So I would like to go to the presentation. It's only a couple of slides to talk about this. So we are announcing this, we have announced before, but again on the webinar, we classifying this as the UK's first supermarket sorting line, because this material is not being, these facilities are not in the UK. Those are existing, they're unable to handle the film. And this investment is for £15 million. And this is to recover recycled films and flexible plastics. And the facility is 75,000 square foot, and it will create between 40 to 50 jobs. The project is happening, and it will handle 70,000 metric ton a year capacity on this facility. And it is planned to go live during May and June next year. This is our role as a European economy in the market to provide a sustainable solution for future, which will help us to bring more recycling and create more recycling within the UK industry. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Sabir.
Yeah, and this is actually just shows the couple of this is showing the site and the photos, but the most important point was the first one.
Excellent. So you said your new facility comes on stream in May next year.
That's right. That's right.
Well, that's excellent news, and it's very welcome news, because I think we all know that the majority of the major UK grocery retailers are all rolling out front of store. I suppose I ought to declare an interest here that that Berry BPI recycled products and Eurokey and Tesco are partners in this. We're actually
absolutely.
If you go into well, I don't know if they're on the shelf yet, but if you go into a Tesco store, this is for the people that say it can't be done. You know, there's a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, front of store recycling, it's a hoax, it's a con, it doesn't happen." Well, it is happening, and there's a new range of heavy-duty refuse sacks in all the major Tesco stores. I think they went live this week, which is made out of the material that Zubair sorts and Berry recycles and turns into refuse sacks. So it can be done. It worries me. It worries me at times that it's far too easy for the anti-plastics NGOs to peddle propaganda, which is quite frankly untrue. And,
correct. And Mike, we need more partnership like this in the industry where the possibilities can be made with the right sortation. So, we have a right in feedstock for companies like you to actually turn the product into, recycle the product.
So I've got a couple of, I've got some nice questions coming in now. Now, I can see our friend Chris Wilson has said, what happens to the residues that are not suitable for mechanically recycling? Well, we do have solutions for that, don't we, Zubair? But I'm afraid I'm not in a position to talk about them at the moment.
Yeah, all I can say is that, yes, we do have a solution, but I cannot talk about that because it's more of a presentation what we're doing. So we cannot go into the details of that. So, but yes, we do have a solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Chris is saying from a new ELP is that, of course, there's a part for everything in this mix, and certainly it is our view that chemical recycling will have a big part to play in the future. There's no doubt about that, and we welcome it. Not everything can be done mechanically, and chemical recycling will have a part to play. We just have to hope that the government will see sense and alter the, this is a nudge for you all, that if you haven't yet replied to the latest consultation on the UK plastic tax, you should. It closes on the 1st of December. And government are suggesting that mass balance cannot be used for chemical recycling to count for the plastic tax. Well, in that case, you might as well write off most chemical recyclers in the UK. So let's hope they change their mind. Anonymous attendee, Zubair, how are you finding contamination in front of store? How would you deal with the increased contamination from curbside collections where materials not cleaned out, such as cat food pouches?
Sure. The tonnage it's very early stages for the front of store, and it's building up at the moment. So it's the tonnage is not there at the moment as the people getting the awareness. So once it's increased, the contamination will be analyzed, and then we will take it further from there.
Yeah, the sort of equipment that Steve's got at Tomra and that large recyclers have got with a wash plant, you've got to have a wash plant. Actually, the cat food pouches with the cat food in, strangely enough, can be dealt with. First of all, it can be identified quite easily because it's going to be a metallized laminate.
Indeed.
And even if there's cat food in there, we can get it out. So that isn't actually the issue. Steve said the issue is the multiplicity of different types of polymer. Another question for you, Zubair. So is this facility only for front of store sorting or supermarket films, or will it accept any other curbside sorted films?
This facility is for supermarket films and for front of store from the supermarkets, not actually the curbside collection. So this facility is mainly for supermarket materials, what's coming from their stream.
And Nick Hunt's last question, great to see added capacity. How would the facility handle any PVC in the waste stream?
Good question, but because of, I cannot mention few commercial sensitive information if there is or there is not. And so I won't be able to answer this question, unfortunately.
Okay, I can add to it.
Yeah.
That under the Wrap Plastic Pact, under the Brussels CPA and CFlex and Ellen MacArthur, we hope that PVC packaging will cease to be used as a packaging material. That's the answer to it. And certainly I know that many of the major brands and retailers are quickly exiting PVC. And the sooner that happens, the better, because it is a serious contaminant in the waste stream. And the last question from, could you provide highlights on what is novel in this facility versus conventional sorting and recycling of rigid plastics?
Great question. And that's what all the research has been for the last 3 years. We can take the example of the current infrastructure. They are unable to handle the films from household, for example. So definitely there are some challenges. Either it's an old infrastructure or they need to input more new technologies there. Our facility or this sorting line is unique because it's for this type of material. And because we have experience in this waste stream, hence the reason we were able to design the facility to do the auto sort, especially for this material, which is very complex material. And as I said, that as compared to the other materials where the data isn't clear in the market anyway, that what the capture rate is and how the recycling is happening, how the MRFs are running in a way of what capture rates are there, versus our material have all recyclable materials. And that's the biggest challenge. And this is what we have achieved, that we'll be able to segregate all the plastics, get them ready for the end recyclers.
Yeah, thank you, Spout. I mean, I think I can say this without giving away commercial in confidence. I mean, we've already recycled 60 tons of front of store from Zubair, with more on the way. So I think once you've taken the challenge, nobody's mentioned this yet, but I will. I think that one of the other problems we're going to face is actually markets for the pellet that's produced. It's something that I think all stakeholders are going to have to address and look again at their packaging portfolio, because Zubair can invest millions in his sortation facility and recyclers can invest millions in new recycling equipment. But if there aren't markets for the pellet that's produced, then it all becomes academic. But that's nothing new. We've been aware of that.
Absolutely. So, and this is what Mike's going to attract in the market for different sectors to make their products more in the local market here, instead of going into Europe or to the other countries.
I think the fact is, if you give the citizen the opportunity to do the right thing, the citizen will do the right thing. We've seen that with the supermarkets that we're doing work with. You put a bin at the front and say, please bring all your flexible packaging here, they will. And when I'm talking about that, don't try and confuse them and say only bring this or only bring that, because they're not going to know. We have to accept that. Put a bin out, so bring all your soft plastics here, the consumers will bring them. And then it's down to Zubair and Stephen and businesses like mine to cooperate together to sort it out. Well, thank you, Zubair. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
And I don't think we've got any more questions for you now. So we move on to our last speaker of today, which is, who is? Michelle Marone. Hello, Michelle. Good to see you. Who's the Group Sustainability and Innovations Manager for Gualapac. So welcome to our overseas contributor today. Over to you, Michelle.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me to this webinar. Yes, in fact, Gualapac is not only a member of Recoup, but we're also very much present in the UK market. So it's the first time I'm presenting in the UK, but our pouches are basically everywhere. In the UK, people tend to call them guala pouches, even when they're not made by us. So that's interesting. So yes, today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we work together with Recoup to prove the recyclability of our monomaterial solution, which is our newcomer, new kid on the block. So if we could just carry on to the next slide, please. Thanks. We, as a company, I'm going to be very fast here because we only have 10 minutes. But as a company, we are like a small multinational. So we're more or less, we have a global footprint, although we're just slightly above 2,000 people in the world. Latest acquisition has been the Easy Snap technology, which is a new kind of single dose format that we're able to make thanks to the fact that we've acquired this small Italian company. And as of 2022, we will be opening offices in the US as well for the North American market. So that's going to be exciting. So we like to think of our business as sort of a technology crossover. Next, please. Technology crossover, meaning that we don't just supply a pouch to our clients that want to fill it with baby food or snacks or whatever, but we are also in a position to supply the filling machine with which the pouch can be filled. Or for clients that want to be more inflexible, let's say, although it seems like a play on words, given that we're flexible packaging converters. But yeah, clients that want to have a different business model, we can also supply just the laminate. So just supplying directly the film that we make, and or caps and spouts. So we also have our own injection molding division that can operate and sell independently. So today we're talking about sustainability. So next, please. We've been very active since 2017. When I came on board with becoming sort of sustainable coordinator, it's because our CEO had envisaged to actually create a committee to put all our sustainable actions, programs, activities, and especially our product development and our innovation all under one umbrella. So one umbrella with, you know, kind of some key principles. And we came out with a sustainability report in 2018, 19, and 2020. So these are available online. But our main focus is really on the product. So if we go to the next slide, yes, growing sustainably, competing with the best is our vision. And in terms of product, next again, please. I'm going to take you through our journey. So next, thank you. What we had to do was sort of face the outside world and bring the outside world into Gualapak. So the outside world is obviously about legislation. So as flexible packaging converters, we were facing legislation mandating recyclability, reusability, or compostability. But before the legislator, we were also confronting the consumer and the consumer sensitivity, the consumer concern. And in the middle of all this were the industry and the industry pledges. And that's where you know, we were actually having our business-to-business discussions, you know, because we're a little bit far from the consumer, but the people we talk to every day are the retailers and the brand owners. And the retailers and the brand owners were telling us, okay, it's not enough that you've got a fantastic solution because it's lightweight, you know, so it's optimal use of raw materials, you know, and it's great, but it also has to be recyclable. And of course, you know, by making it recyclable, we also knew that we were going to be taking out aluminum, we were going to be taking out PET and nylon, and this was already making us sustainable, you know, in spite of what was going to happen at the end of the value chain, so at the end of life of the product when it's disposed of by the consumer. We already knew that by taking out aluminum, PET, in some cases polyamide, we were already reducing the carbon footprint. Actually, 60% of our carbon footprint was really related to the raw materials. So this was an amazing finding. Just by switching to a polyolefin, which in our case was PP, this was already making us, a lot more sustainable in terms of carbon footprint. Next, please. So what we had to do to be not only sustainable and have a low carbon footprint, but to be recyclable, which is what our stakeholders wanted, what we had to do was to make something that was still our iconic product on the market, which is our baby food pouch. And we had to do it in a way so that nobody could tell the difference except the recycler. So this is what we had to do. We had to make sure that it was still good for the babies, robust, safe, compliant. You could pasteurize it, fill it, keep it on a shelf for 12 months, etc. Next, please. So the question now was how to do it. And we were in a position where making a sample and a press release and saying, hey, we did this great thing, that was not enough. We had to make sure that this could be mass distributed because our products are, relatively cheap, small, disposable. And so, of course, we had to do it so that it could be mass distributed, and it had to work. It had to work in a robust and consistent way. So what did we do? We used PP. We decided to use PP, and we needed PP for everything, for the printing, for the sealing, for the barrier. We had to make sure that our lamination would keep up its dimensional stability. We had to make sure that we could still seal our spout onto the pouch despite having a much narrower process window, because instead of having a polyethylene on the inside and a PET on the outside, we had all PP. So the processing window and the sealing temperatures were very close. The window was very narrow. And of course, we had to make sure that it was going to be working on our client filling lines. So we had to be in the real world with real product. Next, please. So this was not something we could do alone. We could not do it alone. So we partnered with CFlex, and we followed their design for circular economy guidelines in order to design a proper monomaterial pouch, which is well over 90% PP, respecting the guidelines on barrier, adhesive, and so on. We tested it, as I said, with select clients. We partnered with people as Recoup, such as Recoup and Tomra and Recyclas, to actually walk the talk and make sure that the pouch was correctly identified, correctly sorted, because that was the key. We also certified the recyclability of the product, going to third-party certification bodies such as Intercero and Cyclos. But now comes the fun part. So here comes the fun part. Next, please. In the UK, our guala pouches, as they're locally called, were facing a big issue, and we could make the perfect pack that was greatly, wonderfully recyclable, but the problem was that it was not being collected. So there was no flexible packaging collection curbside in the UK. And moreover, nobody could really understand whether our pouch was actually flexible or rigid. So there was this double question. We had rigid containers such as PET and HDPE being widely collected and recycled on the one hand. On the other hand, we didn't know if our pouches were going to be seen as a rigid container or as a flexible. And at the bottom line was that they were not being collected, and so they could never have a future. And we talked about this with Tesco, we talked about this with Heinz, and with Recoup, of course, because Recoup kind of brought us all together, and this was great. Next, please. So yeah, Tesco's guidelines in 2020, so I'm not talking 10 years ago, this is just 1 year ago. You can see that our spouted pouches, which were in the category defined here as a multi-layer film or a complex laminate, they were actually put in the amber column. Amber column means controlled use. We were not really sure if they were going to be accepted on shelf or not in the coming future. Next, please. So we decided to team up with Recoup, and we went to a company called Bright Green. They're recycled PP processors. And we worked at scale in a facility that was 2.5 tons per hour, not considering the issue of collection, but just to test and prove the technical recyclability. And here's an abstract of the report that Recoup issued. And what it says is basically that The pouches were recognized to have a high sorting efficiency because they're a lot denser than normal flexibles. And if the cap is left on, this improves the recyclability, of course, because it makes them heavier. And the material also passed successfully through the star screen, so it was not lost. It was granulated, washed, and flakes were successfully produced for PP bottle grade. An interesting point that was observed is that if this will pick up in the future, as we hope it will, there will have to be education at the sorting facility to make sure that there's no negative picking, meaning that the pouch is not actually picked out by the operators. So next, please. Here you can see the picture of our pouches that were sorted correctly and only 2% lost. Next, please. So the great and immediate result that we had as a consequence of this is that our monomaterial spouted pouch was actually seen by Tesco because Tesco, as I said, was part of this exercise where Recoup brought us all together. And we ended up as an extra feature on the green column. So now in the green column, you can see an extra added child, which is the monomaterial spouted pouch, which is definitely green, so preferred for UK recycling, curbside, or store. And the other great thing that happened in the summer of this year, next please, is that OPRL accepted our pouch together with Heinz, in collaboration with Heinz. These new baby food pouches that are soon going to be on the market as a monomaterial solution will be they will be clearly identified by a logo, an OPRL logo that says recycle cap on, because obviously the cap is improving the recyclability. So this is really the result of the work that we did with Recoup, and we did it on different formats. We did it on a smaller pouch and three different pouch sizes. So what is the future for the UK as I get to my last slide? Definitely other brands will be able to follow on the same, in the same footsteps as Heinz by adopting the OPRL logo if they use the Guala pouch in mono PP. But unfortunately, the UK plastic tax is still there. I mean, the recyclability, unfortunately, does not make the package exempt from the plastic packaging tax. So the only way to be exempt from the tax in our world, the spouted pouch world, is to carry a 30% recycled content, which in the food grade world would have to necessarily be chemically recycled material. So we are now certified ISCC. And there is one brand in the UK that very, very shortly will be launching a Guala pouch, first of a kind, that will have 30% recycled, chemically recycled resin in it. So thank you. Sorry for taking a bit too long and open to questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll turn my camera on. Thank you, Michelle. I have just had a question come in, which I will read to you. On the plastic tax, Michelle. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's £200 a tonne, and as many people will know on the call, the premium for chemically recycled polymer is an awful lot more than £200 a tonne. So if the reason for wanting to get recyclate into a product was to avoid the plastic tax, that's a bit of an own goal, but I'm sure prices will come down. Question for you.
Well, yeah, if I could just comment on that, you're absolutely right. Although it's 30% recycled content, it's still, you know, something to be aware of, that the premium is very high when you're paying for chemical recycling material. It will go down as volumes increase, but it's also for sure a way to get industry commitment. I think people that do this don't do it just to pay less, but also to be committed to doing something new, innovative, something that can be also communicated.
Okay, questions. First of all, I've had a comment from Jonathan saying that chemical recycling is not recognised as PPT, plastic compliance. That's true, Jonathan. but I am expecting that there is a good possibility that will change. That's all I can say at this stage. Now, Mark Lockyer says, for cosmetic products, shower gels, can you avoid the chemical recycling in PCR content? I think that's just a comment. So let's move on, see if there's any questions for you. These are more comments, Michelle. Will most councils be happy to accept these pouches in their collections? Won't MRFs need reconfiguring? Do you want to address that?
Well, I think that's a very good question. Spot on, really. You know, these things take time. I think there is no country in Europe that is actually completely homogeneous in terms of infrastructure. Not even Germany or Italy, where perhaps there's more. France for sure is not homogeneous yet. So I think, yes, MRFs will have to gear up to the game. This will not happen overnight. I think it's great that large influencers such as Tesco and Heinz are trying to, you know, get this critical mass, you know, to win the inertia that otherwise would be typical of municipalities, I'm afraid, all over the world.
Okay. Here's a question you may or may not want to answer. Did Gualapac get EFSA or FSA approval for the chemical recycled content in the new pouch?
Yeah, okay. I think that's a question that's a little bit wrong. So I'll be happy to answer it, but it's not exact in the way it's formulated, because chemical recycled material is a resin that we purchase, and we purchase with food compliance certificates as any other resin that we buy. So there's absolutely no difference in the paperwork that has to accompany that resin. Otherwise, we would never purchase it, and we could definitely not put it in our pouch. Even more so considering that it's a baby food application.
Okay, that's a very precise answer. Another question for you. Have you taken any actions to increase collection, i.e. incorporating spouted pouches into the curbside?
That's an interesting one too. So obviously, you know, we cannot do anything about how material is disposed of or collected. However, because the cap is so important in making sure that it's collected and also ending up with the same behavior as a rigid container, we are now in the process of replacing a lot of our caps with the tethered version. So obviously, again, this is a choice that is made by our clients. So our clients, the brand owners, they can choose whether to replace or not the cap. But we are offering now tethered caps, which means caps that remain attached to the spout and to the container, and therefore will always be disposed of together with the pouch. And this will really encourage municipalities to collect them, because if you don't collect them, you would be losing the high value plastic, which is mostly really in the cap. And there's a lot, you know, high value material in the cap itself.
Okay, a follow-up question from that saying, do you think flexible PP monomaterial without a spout is also considered as green, and why?
Okay, it's definitely, yes, as green in terms of LCA, because even a stand-up pouch like the ones for ready meals, for instance, that have only flexible laminate, or even wrappers for snacks, it's always better than having a structure where you have a multi-material laminate. So it's definitely greener by LCA. In terms of collection, no, this material is not yet collectible. There is no stream in place for it yet. And it also would tend to probably bring a lower value material at the end of the day, because it has the highest concentration of inks and adhesives, obviously. without the mitigating factor of, you know, the cap and the spout. So the answer is you still have a green material for sure, less value and today not collected.
Okay, thank you. Point of information for you, Michelle, and for everybody else. Last weekend, the government announced yet another consultation. This is DEFRA,
oh, wow.
on banning certain single-use plastics. But hidden away with it was what's called a call for evidence. And for those of you that don't know how it works, you start off with a call for evidence. This is from DEFRA, and then dependent on the responses to the call for evidence, then the next move is to a formal consultation, which outlines government thinking. Then following the consultation, it's normally draft primary legislation. So on Saturday, not only was there a consultation on banning certain single-use plastics, there was a call for evidence on pouches and sachets. And if you're not aware, there are a couple of NGOs in the UK who are constantly hammering on various politicians' doors, demanding that sachets and pouches should be banned. So I would urge all of you, especially you, Michelle, with a good news story to tell about your pouches, to ensure that you respond to the call for evidence, which can be found on the DEFRA website. We've got a few more minutes to go. Did you know about that, Michelle?
Actually, I did not, and thank you for telling me. So I'll definitely check that out on the website, DEFRA.
Yeah, you need to, because these are the sort of messages we've got to get to government, because the anti-plastics NGO say, oh, it should all be banned. Get rid of the lot. You know, let's increase greenhouse gases and use other materials. It's a fact.
Can I just add there a little bit as well, because
of course you can, Stephen.
Genuinely, this is fantastic. The effort you guys have gone to reinvent a product is fantastic, and it almost brought a tear to my eye, the fact that it's monopolymer. Anyone who's already sorting polypropylene will eject this with the rest of the polypropylene. So even if a percentage is manually rejected and picked back out, if an optical sorter has classed it as polypropylene, the bulk of it is going to be recycled. It's taken a huge leap forward from something that's already, you know, the mixed layer, mixed polymer, multi-layer film-backed pouches that you see almost certainly end up in energy from waste. You know, this is a huge leap forward, and it's going to find its way into the recycling supply chain. And, you know, again, I wasn't part of the sort of assessment of the product through TOMRA, but equally, I can only assume that actually it's already finding its way into the supply chain, and it's going to happen without much complication. So it's a massive leap forward, and to suddenly say actually we're going to ban it when people are making this level of effort to get the product right is crazy. Just unbelievable.
Very disappointing, yes.
Yeah.
Welcome to the world of government. I mean, that's why I know a lot of people think it's boring, but that's why it's so important that all stakeholders respond to things like the technical consultation on the plastic tax, which closes, as I mentioned earlier, on the 1st of December. As it stands at the moment, chemical recycled material will not be in scope. And there's an exemption for the tax because HMRC have said no to mass balance. There's a huge amount of lobbying going on in this space, but the more people that respond to this consultation on the technical issues of the plastic tax, the better. That's the way it works. It's going to be the same with the SUP directive. Because we're all in this together. I know a lot of you hear me going on about this all the time for years, that we are in this together, everybody in the sector. You can't leave it just to me as a recycler or to Steve as the supplier of the sortation material, or Zubair doing the collecting and the sorting. We're all in this together, including the brands and the retailers who've got to specify use recycled material. And in the few minutes I've got left, I've got to say that Recoup has done some excellent collaborative work in the last couple of years. Some of you will know about the Nestle project, where Recoup facilitated a cooperation whereby we took material out of a MRF. And this belies another of the myths. People say, oh, you shouldn't use flexible packaging, plastic, because it can't be recycled. Well, we took material out of, this was genuine curbside, out of, I'll name it, out of the Waterbeach MRF near Cambridge. And it was recycled and turned into shrink film and used in commercial quantities. So all these sort of things, but it's all about collaboration. Excuse me. It's all about collaboration and working together. And I must add to what Stephen said, that is a great development, Michelle. Right, I've just had two questions. Karen says, sorry I missed the start. Will the seminar be available afterwards? I don't know. Paul, will the seminar be available afterwards?
Yes, it's being recorded. So it's
being recorded. Excellent. Now, Libby Coe says, Mike, can you confirm something you just said? Will chemically recycled plastic be considered recycled plastic for the purpose of the 30% part in the tax? Right, Libby, listen carefully. As the draft regulations stand at the moment, HMRC, and they're the ones that are driving this train, HMRC have said they will not accept mass balance as proof of chain of custody. So if you've got mechanical recycling, you can say to HMRC, right, here's the goods in note for the 20 ton of scrap that came into the recycling factory. Here's the individual works order. Here's the production records. Here's the batch number of the recycler that came out. And here's the order to show it was used again. You can't do that with chemically recycling. You can only do it through mass balance. Now, everybody knows this and everybody accepts this except HMRC. So what we are urging all stakeholders to do is to make sure that you respond to the current technical consultation, which closes on the 1st of December. You can get it through the HMRC website, and it's a technical consultation. It's a bit boring, a lot of it, and it gives the gives industry and all stakeholders the option to comment on how the tax is going to work. Things like, should it be on invoice, all this sort of stuff. And in there is the reference. And what a lot of people are doing is saying, well, actually, HMRC, if you take this approach, if you say that chemical recycled material, you won't allow mass balance, then you'll find all the chemical recyclers that were planning on investing in the UK will just quite simply move their investment plans to mainland Europe. So that's the current situation. And now I say I've just picked it up, mass balance for bioplastics, but not chemically recycled. Fine. So we've just got a couple more minutes, and I wonder if any of our panelists have got anything further to add after this morning's excellent session. I'll just leave the chat open for a little bit longer to see if there's any more questions coming in. would any of our panelists like to take this opportunity to give a 30-second, no more, summary? If not, I would say well done to Paul and the Recoup team for organising this. Panelists, you have your 30 seconds. And there was silence from the panelists. So I've got another question just come in. Hold on. And it's another point of information. And it says the new coalition government in Germany have said that chemical recycling will have the same status as mechanical recycling. Well, then let's hope that common sense prevails in the UK. Although I have to, no, I can't say that as a member of the ACP. Common sense and common sense of government are words that are never heard together. I'll end up in the tower. Well, Paul, do you have anything to add before I close the meeting?
I think Stephen had something to say.
I was only going to, I was just going to quickly highlight that we briefly touched on plastics packaging tax and its viability when compared to the increased cost of buying the resins from chemical recycling. Once the plastics tax is in, it's only going one way. That's up. You know, it's only going to become more expensive and the technology will become cheaper. But in countries across Europe, there are different levels of tax. Spain, for instance, is something like 800 euros per tonne. So the encouragement for the use of any source of recycled material is much, much higher. And I think that will drive changes in legislation on a continuous basis. And certainly reviews will happen more regularly.
Okay, Steve, we've got to close off, but I just must give a point of information here. The tax is not 800 euros a tonne in Spain. Spain and Italy have announced a tax. They've deferred it again and again, and it's based on the European Union own resources legislation, and I haven't really got time to cover it. That is 800 euros a tonne, but it's part of the budget calculations for each member state. And it's based on the difference between what is placed on the market in an individual country and what is recycled. And the difference, i.e. material that goes to landfill or is burnt, is charged to that member state at 800 euros a tonne. That's where the Spanish and the Italian proposals come from. Both of them are 450 euros a tonne on the virgin content of packaging, but both have been deferred yet again into 2022. If anybody wants to know more about that, it's Mike Baxter at berryglobal.com. I am a very sad person that I know all about taxes in most European countries. So finally, it's over to you, Paul, for a summary.
Mike, all I really need to say is thank you very much for chairing. Thank you to our speakers. I think it's been a good mix. While trying to keep to a similar subject, we've had a good mix of strands, different opinions, and some pretty good questions that keep us on our toes. So thank you very much for attending. As mentioned before, the recording and slides will be shared with you afterwards. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks to the panels. Bye, everybody. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.